Okay, well, hello everybody. We're going to be trying this again. And we're going to be looking today at our Heart and Home Spiritual Care Program. And particularly, I want to do some talking about person-centered spiritual care and the skills that we use in person-centered spiritual care. I know that there's been some confusion as we've rolled out the new template, and so I'm hoping that talking about the skills in particular in the next maybe 7 to 10 minutes, you can get a sense of the way that I'm conceptualizing using the skills, so we can have a common language with each other, and you'll be better versed in how to use them both in your charting and when you're talking with other clinicians about your cares and your services. So the first thing to think about is that there are kind of two fundamental skills or skill sets in the person-centered spiritual care model. And they're very basic: empathic skills and congruency skills. Now, when I say that they're very basic, what I mean by that is that they're basic counseling skills, they're basic helping skills. But just because we use the terminology of basic around them doesn't mean that they're simple, and doesn't mean that they're easy to master. And it doesn't mean that as we use them that we are somehow rudimentary in the cares that we're doing. Rather, really what it says is that the skills are very basic, but there is an art form. There is a way to be artistic with the skills, to really use them effectively to help people. And that takes a lifetime to master. So even though we're saying they're basic skills, these are the skills you focus on over the lifetime of your cares as a person-centered spiritual care provider. So this is based off the work of this lady here. Her name is Janet Talon. And if you wanted to pick up just an excellent book to read about skills and person-centered care, this would be an excellent read. It's relatively short. It's relatively inexpensive to pick up. And it's really been insightful for me as I've been doing this work. So when you start to think about empathic skills, these are the skills that help us to focus or to stay inside of the speaker's frame of reference. So language is important. So as I'm talking through these next couple of slides, when I talk about the terminology of the speaker, that really is the person who's coming to us for help. So whether that's a client, whether that's if you're more in a parish setting and you're working with a parishioner, so whether you're doing kind of pastoral counseling, classical chaplaincy, or spiritual care providing, when we talk about the speaker, it's the person who's coming for help or is asking for help. So when we're using our empathic listening skills or empathic skills, we're really trying to stay within the speaker's frame of reference. And then we, as the listener, then are attempting to voice what we hear from the speaker instead of moving towards questioning or suggesting. Janet Talon talks about how it's very common, even for professional helpers, to move right past the reflecting stage, and straight into the helping stage of asking questions or offering suggestions. And what can be more helpful to a person who is seeking help than moving straight into the questioning or the suggestion is just to actually to reflect what is being heard. And in this way, the speaker learns what it feels like to be fully received by the listener, and ultimately to gain the ability to listen to him or herself with trust. And this really is the goal of empathic listening skills, to help the person to trust their own listening. And what we're doing is we're offering back to them what we are hearing and what we are seeing from their internal frame of reference, is help them to become better self-listeners. So there are two basic processes then for doing empathic skills, or for working with empathic skills. So first thing we are doing when we're using empathic skills is we're reporting back the content of what we're hearing. Janet Talon calls this level of empathic skills kind of the surface level empathic skill work, where all we're doing is offering back the content, just what we're hearing, the content. It can almost be a parroting back. So you hear your patient saying that they're sad, and so you simply say, "You're sad," or they're talking about their day and their day was busy, you could simply say, your day was very busy. It's very, very simple. But that could be the beginning place, so the reporting of the content. Then as we move deeper into the empathic skill sets, we start to both report the content and the feeling. And in this way, we draw the person into deeper self-listening. So report the content and a connected feeling. Example of that might be to say that your day was busy and it felt very hectic. You felt unsettled. And so we're just reporting back to them what we hear. These skills tend to have very little threat to them. The only real threat that I see when I'm working with empathic listening skills is that if I get stuck into one prompting as I enter the empathic skills, like saying, I hear you saying, or it seems like, when we get into those habits of kind of having a tagline that we use to enter the skill set, that can get us in trouble, and it can actually create threat. The patient might tell us, or the client might tell us, you don't really seem like you're listening. You're just kind of, doing this kind of weird counseling trick. So watch out for your own little quirks that you have. What are they, and how can you identify them? Just make sure that you're aware of how do you enter into these empathic skill set. However, that being said, when you're learning the empathic skill set, using little self-prompters like it seems like, or I hear you saying, can be very helpful. Once again, it's just a matter of, do you get stuck in rhythms of doing the same thing over and over and over again? That's where you could create some threat and actually start to negatively affect your therapeutic relationship with your clients. So when we look at our charting tool then, and we have those little drop-down menus, and we have all these different skills here, some of these skills are going to be empathic skills, and some of these skills are going to be congruency skills. So the first kind of empathic skill that I see as I work with this list of skills is minimal encouragers. And minimal encouragers are just the very simplest thing that you have to do to let the client know that you are still engaged and you're actively listening to them. So it can be as simple as a head nod, an eye gesture. It could be as simple as it could be like, yeah, very simple things. Now, you want to watch your pacing when you use minimal encouragers, because this can be another thing that can feel very awkward. I remember when I was going through CPE, I had I guess a mentoring counselor, and she would use minimal encouragers, in my opinion, way too much. And so she would go, yeah, It was almost like she was very uncomfortable with the level of silence that she was having inside of a visit, and so she used minimal encouragers all the time. So minimal encouragers can be very helpful, but once again, watch your pacing of them. Also realize that minimal encouragers can display agendas in our listening. So for an example, is I'm using minimal encouragers to the client, and the client starts to talk about his depression. And it could be that that's the thing that I really want them to talk about, so I want to, in a way, to influence them to talk more about that. I can use minimal encouragers to do that. So I could be like, and really add emphasis to my minimal encouragers, and as a result, the client learns almost unconsciously that this is what I want to hear him talk about. These are the things I'm actually here to listen for. Now, it's not necessarily that that's a bad thing. We're going to talk about influencer responders here in a little bit. But as spiritual care providers, at times we can get caught in this idea that what we really need to hear about are the spiritual dimensions as we define them. And so when we go in and the client starts to talk about God or church or kind of any of these kind of hot topic religious words, we may be of the mindset that that's what we need to encourage them to talk about, so we'll use them there. And so I bring that up just to say, when you're using minimal encouragers, what is your own self-awareness? And how are you using them really to stay in the client's frame of reference rather than to insert any of your agenda onto the client? Now, summarizing. Summarizing is very simple. It's just really listening to the content of what you've heard and offering it back with summarization. So a simple form of what you've just heard. Now, similar to summarization is paraphrasing. But when I paraphrase, I'm actually going to use alternative language in my offering back. So when I summarize, I'm going to use almost verbatim language. When I paraphrase, I'm going to use alternative language. So you can almost say that in the empathic skill set, that paraphrasing is more of a deeper skill than summarizing is. And then reflecting of feelings, just what it sounds like, that I'm kind of oftentimes I'm just naming what I see. It seems like you're angry. It seems like you're sad. And when you're reflecting feelings, it's going to be important to watch the affect in the patient. Reflecting of feelings can be one of those empathic skills that can, at times, create more threat in the helping relationship. So watch that when you're using them. So for an example, I might offer the word angry. Seems like you're really angry about this. But there's something about the person's self-concept that they cannot be an angry person. So when they hear you say angry, they actually cannot accept that experiencing. So they have to find ways to deny it. No, I'm not angry. And even if they're demonstrating anger to you, they're leaned up in their chair, they're coming at you in a way, but they're saying, no, I'm not angry. Then I'm going to use alternative language until I can decrease that threat in their experiencing. So I might say, well, okay, you're not angry, but maybe a little miffed, a little upset about this. And so when you're offering reflection of feelings, once again, you're kind of staying in that client's frame of reference. They'll tell you if it's too much of a threat. Excuse me. But that's how you can use reflection of feelings. Next, we have reflection of meaning. So when we reflect meaning, at times I use this a lot when I'm listening to stories. And I'm hearing somebody tell me a story. And it's almost like we're getting lost in the details of the content of the story. And we're moving away from the processing, the reason that the person brought up this story. So I might use reflection of feeling